In the Blackthorn Pack, there was one night every generation waited for. It was called the Selection Moon, the night the moon goddess herself was said to choose a sacred Luna. This was not the ordinary mate bond that every wolf felt when they found their partner. A sacred Luna was chosen directly by the goddess, marked with a silver crescent that only appeared under moonlight, and given powers no ordinary wolf could ever have. It was the highest honor in the history of the 7 packs, and it had not happened in over 100 years. For weeks before the ceremony, alphas from every pack traveled to Blackthorn territory. They brought their strongest sons, their proudest daughters, and their most beautiful warriors, all hoping the goddess would choose someone from their bloodline. The pack elders built a large stone shrine in the center of the courtyard, and lines of candles were placed around it. Everyone believed the goddess would choose a powerful she-wolf, someone with royal blood, someone trained since birth for greatness. Mira Voss was not one of them. Mira was an Omega, the lowest rank in wolf society. She had grown up hearing whispers about her weak wolf spirit, a spirit that had never fully shifted the way it should. The pack called her Broken Mira, sometimes behind her back, and sometimes right to her face. Even her own parents rarely said her name anymore. They simply called her the girl when they spoke of her at all. On the night of the Selection Moon, while the alpha daughters were dressed in white ceremonial gowns and lined up near the shrine, Mira was in the kitchen of the alpha's hall, washing dishes. She was not allowed to watch the ceremony from the courtyard. Omegas were expected to serve, not to hope. She did not mind, or at least she told herself she didn't. She had learned a long time ago that hoping only led to disappointment. It was safer to keep her head down, finish her work, and stay out of everyone's way. Through the kitchen window, she could hear the crowd outside growing louder as midnight approached. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked out just as the shrine's flame began to rise into the sky. The flame was silver, brighter than any fire Mira had ever seen. The entire courtyard fell silent. Every wolf, from the youngest pup to the oldest alpha, dropped to their knees. A voice rolled through the valley, deep and calm, like distant thunder rolling over mountains. It was the voice of the moon goddess. The flame moved. It drifted past the alpha daughters standing at the front in their white gowns. It passed the warrior women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. It moved past every powerful bloodline gathered in the courtyard, and it kept moving, past the crowd, past the shrine itself, until it reached the kitchen doorway. Mira stood frozen, a dish towel still clutched in her hands, as the silver flame settled gently over her chest, right above her heart. A mark bloomed on her collarbone, a crescent moon glowing bright silver against her skin. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then the courtyard exploded into noise. Alphas, who had never once looked in Mira's direction, were suddenly staring at her with wide eyes. Some knelt immediately, whispering prayers. Others whispered furiously to each other, certain there had been some mistake. The alpha daughters in their white gowns turned pale, their perfect ceremony ruined by a girl who scrubbed floors for a living. Cade Ashwood, the alpha of Blackthorn Pack and the most powerful leader among the 7 packs, stood at the front of the crowd. He was known across every territory for his strength, his fairness, and his firm belief that he would never take a mate unless the goddess herself approved. He had turned away countless offers from powerful families, waiting for a sign he never expected to actually receive. Now, staring at the mark glowing on the collarbone of a girl he barely recognized, Cade felt something shift inside his chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. He crossed the courtyard in long, steady strides, ignoring the murmurs and gasps around him, and knelt in front of Mira. "The goddess doesn't choose bloodlines," he said, loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. "She chooses hearts." Mira could barely speak. Her hands trembled as Cade gently took one of them in his own. She searched his face for any sign of a joke, a trick, anything that would explain why this powerful alpha was kneeling in front of an Omega who cleaned his hall. She found nothing but sincerity. Word spread through the pack within hours. Some wolves accepted it immediately, bowing their heads whenever Mira passed. Others were not so willing to let go of their assumptions. The alpha daughters who had spent weeks preparing for this night could not accept that the goddess had chosen an Omega over them. They whispered that it must be a mistake, that the mark would fade by morning, that Mira had somehow tricked the ceremony. The mark did not fade. In the days that followed, Cade insisted that Mira move from the servant quarters into rooms near his own. He assigned guards to her, not because he thought she was in immediate danger, but because he wanted every wolf in the pack to understand that she was protected and valued. Mira found this attention overwhelming. For years, she had learned to make herself small, to avoid notice, to survive by being invisible. Suddenly, she could not walk anywhere without eyes following her. "You don't have to be afraid of them," Cade told her one evening, as they sat together in the quiet garden behind the hall. "Whatever they say, whatever they think, none of it changes what the goddess has already decided." Mira looked down at her hands, thinking of the years of whispered insults, the years of feeling like a burden. "They called me broken for so long," she said quietly. "It's hard to believe anything different now." Cade was silent for a moment. Then he asked her something no one had ever asked before. "Do you know why your wolf never fully shifted?" Mira shook her head. She had always assumed something was simply wrong with her, some flaw in her blood that made her weaker than everyone else. "I don't think that's the reason," Cade said carefully. "I think something has been holding your wolf back." Over the next several weeks, Cade brought in healers and elders from across the 7 packs, wolves who specialized in ancient bonds and old magic. They examined Mira closely, and what they found shocked everyone, including Mira herself. Deep within her, hidden beneath years of suppressed instinct, there was a binding spell, old and carefully hidden, wrapped around her wolf spirit since she was a small child. Someone had deliberately kept her wolf from growing. The healers could not immediately say who had done it, only that it had been placed with great care, likely by someone close to her, someone who had access to her as a young pup. Mira's mind raced through her childhood memories, searching for any clue. She remembered a relative, a cousin of her mother's, who had always seemed unusually interested in Mira's early training, always present during important pack rituals, always watching just a little too closely. The truth came out slowly. The relative in question had a daughter close to Mira's age, a daughter with an average wolf spirit who had always struggled to stand out among stronger pups. Rather than risk her own daughter being overshadowed, she had used an old, forbidden binding spell on young Mira, hiding her natural strength so it would never threaten her daughter's place in the pack. When the truth was finally confirmed, the pack elders were furious. Binding a child's wolf spirit was considered one of the gravest crimes a wolf could commit, a betrayal of the most sacred trust between generations. The relative was brought before the pack council and stripped of her rank, exiled from Blackthorn territory for what she had done. As the binding was carefully broken by the healers, layer by layer, Mira began to change. It was not immediate, but a slow unfolding. Her senses sharpened. Her strength grew. And one night, beneath the full moon, standing alone in the training field, Mira shifted fully for the first time in her life. Her wolf was silver, brighter than any wolf the pack had ever recorded, with a strength that radiated off her, even in wolf form. The pack members who witnessed it fell silent, watching in awe as the girl they had once mocked and dismissed padded gracefully across the field, moving like she had been born knowing exactly how to use every bit of her power. Word of Mira's true strength spread quickly, and this time, there was no doubt left among the doubters. Still, not everyone was ready to accept her. One of the rival alphas who had traveled for the selection moon, a proud and stubborn leader named Alpha Renner, refused to believe an Omega, even a marked one, deserved the respect given to a sacred Luna. He challenged the legitimacy of her mark publicly, claiming it was an insult to real warriors and their bloodlines. Cade offered to settle the matter himself, but Mira stopped him. "Let me," she said. It was the first time she had ever asked for anything in front of the pack. Cade studied her for a long moment, then nodded, trusting her completely. The challenge took place in the same courtyard where the selection moon ceremony had happened weeks earlier. This time, Mira did not stand at the back near the kitchen. She stood in the center, her silver wolf calm and steady, facing Alpha Renner's much larger form. The fight was short. Mira's wolf moved with a precision and speed that caught everyone off guard, dodging Renner's attacks and striking with controlled, deliberate force. Within minutes, Alpha Renner was on the ground, unable to rise, staring up at the wolf he had dismissed as unworthy just moments before. The courtyard was silent, except for the sound of Mira shifting back to her human form, standing tall where she had once knelt in fear. "I was never broken," she said, her voice steady and clear, carrying across the crowd. "I was only hidden, and now I'm not hiding anymore." From that day forward, no one in the Seven Packs questioned Mira's place as Blackthorn's sacred Luna. The Alpha Daughters who had once sneered at her now offered careful, respectful greetings whenever they crossed paths. The pack members who had called her Broken Mira for years now used her full name, sometimes with a quiet embarrassment they never spoke aloud. Mira did not hold on to bitterness, even though she had every reason to. Instead, she used her new position to change things within Blackthorn Pack. She created a program for young Omegas who felt overlooked, offering them training and support that she had never received herself. She made sure no child in the pack would ever have their spirit hidden away, out of jealousy or fear again. Under her guidance, the old rigid hierarchy between ranks began to soften, replaced slowly by a system that valued a wolf's heart and effort, rather than the title they were born into. Cade watched all of this with quiet pride, standing beside her not as someone who had rescued her, but as someone who had simply been given the chance to see her clearly for the first time. Their bond grew steadily, built not on the dramatic mark the goddess had given them, but on the small, ordinary moments that followed. Quiet conversations in the garden, shared meals after long days, the comfort of simply being understood. Months later, on the anniversary of the Selection Moon, the pack gathered once again in the courtyard, this time not in uncertainty, but in celebration. Mira stood beside Cade as their official mating ceremony took place, the same silver crescent mark glowing softly on her collarbone under the moonlight. Looking out at the crowd, Mira saw faces that had once mocked her now smiling warmly in her direction. She thought of the years she had spent believing she was worthless, believing that her quiet nature and gentle heart were signs of weakness rather than strength. The moon goddess had seen something in her that the entire pack had missed for years, something that had nothing to do with bloodlines or titles or the volume of one's pride. She had seen a heart that endured cruelty without becoming cruel itself, a spirit that remained kind even when kindness was never returned. And in the end, that quiet strength had outlasted every powerful bloodline and every proud alpha who had once believed they deserved the goddess's blessing more than she did. As the ceremony ended, and the pack cheered beneath the bright moon, Mira allowed herself, for the first time in her life, to fully believe what Cade had told her that very first night. She had never been broken. She had simply been waiting for the world to finally see her.